Right, question 27. When visiting a hat shop, each customer had the circumference of their head measured. The table shows the results of the customers who bought a hat during December. So if their head circumference was between 50 and 34, by the way, this just means like if you imagine putting a tape measure around your head where your hat would go, that's what they're measuring basically. If your head circumference was between 50 and 54, you were in this group, so there were 12 customers who had the head circumference between 50 and 54. There were 32 whose head circumference was between 54 and 58. There were 14 whose head circumference were between 58 and 62, and there were 2 customers whose head circumference were between 62 and 66. We're now asked to calculate an estimate for the mean head circumference. Now those 2 words are really important because you need to remember when you get, especially when you're doing a foundation paper, towards the back of the paper, if you get one of these tables and it says those 2 words, then you just do exactly what I'm going to do. Nothing changes. The method is always the same. Remember, to figure out the mean, you have to add everything up and divide by how many there are. Now the problem with this is that we don't know what any of these customers' head circumferences actually were. We just know which groups they fall in. So what I mean by that is these 12 people here, we don't know what any of those 12 actual measurements were. We just know they all lay between 50 and 54. So what we do is, the estimate part of this is we estimate that all of those 12 people had a head circumference of 52, and we call that estimate the midpoint of these 2 numbers. So in the middle of 50 and 54, that is 52. If you're ever unsure of how to get a midpoint, add the 2 numbers that you're trying to figure out the midpoint for. So add 50 and 54, get your answer, divide the answer by 2, and it will give you the midpoint. Okay, these ones are quite easy to spot though, so although you wouldn't need to do that for these. So these 32 customers, we're now going to figure out the midpoint for them, or the estimate for them, midway between 54 and 58. Hopefully that's 56. By the way, if this is jogged your memory or anything, please stop the video and have a go, and then come back and check that you're getting it right. These 14 between 58 and 62, that's 60. And these last 2 people with the biggest heads between 62 and 66, it's going to be 64. So now what this means is we've effectively got 12 people with 52, 32 56s, 14 60s, and 2 people with head circumference of 64. So if I want to add all them up, the quickest way to do it, instead of adding up 12 52s, so 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52, is to just multiply. 12 times 52, we'll add all them up. 32 times 56, we'll add all them up. 14 times 60, we'll add all them up. And 2 times 64, we'll add all them up. And I'm going to put those answers here. And we call that column FX. Don't ask why, basically. So 12 times 52 gives me 624. 32 times 56 gives me 1,792. 14 times 60 gives me 840, and 2 times 64 is 128. So if I add all of those numbers up, it now gives me the total for everyone's head circumference. So 624, add 1792, add 840, add 128, and my answer there is 3384. Okay, so that is my total. That's the total of everyone's head circumference. So to figure out the mean, I need to do the total divided by how many people there were. To figure out how many people there were, you might be tempted to divide by 4, but remember, this doesn't mean that there are 4 customers. It means there are 4 groups into which the customers can go. So I need to add all of these up to figure out how many customers there were. So I'm going to do 12, add 32, add 14, add 2, which gives me 60. So that means there were 60 customers that I've measured the heads for. So what I'm going to do to figure out the mean is this number, the total, divided by 60, which gives me around about 56.4. And I can check that because my head circumferences went from 50 up to 66. So does this lie within that range? Yeah, it does, because remember, a mean is a typical value. So if I'd have got anything below 50 or above 66 for my mean, I know it must have been wrong, This one seems in the middle of those. It's in the most popular group, 54 to 58. That's where most of the customers were. So that seems like a correct answer to me. Right, part B. The hat shop sells 4 different sizes of hats. The conversion table from head circumference to hat size is shown below. So what this table is saying is, basically, these 12 customers were all in 50 to 54, so they were size 1. These 32 customers would have been size 2. These 14 customers would have been size 3, and these 2 customers would have been size 4. So let's put in the numbers that we would have got there. There were 12 people there, there were 32 people there, there were 14 people there, and there were 2 people there. It's a little bit tricky, this question, not necessarily the maths behind it, but just to know what to do with the data that you're given. Okay? So, and remember there were 60 people altogether. A salesman places an order for new stock for the hat shop. The salesman order form shows that about half of the hats ordered were size 2. The owner of the shop says the order should show that about a quarter should be size 2. Who is more likely to be correct, the salesman or the owner of the shop? And you have to give a reason. Well, let's have a look at the owner of the shop first. He's saying that a quarter. Now, the reason he's saying a quarter is because there's 4 sizes, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it, if you think about it not too deeply. There's 4 sizes, and buying 60 of these things, so about a quarter would need to be each size. Now, that would be true if we had the same, around about the same number of people for each size, but we don't, do we? That isn't how things work. So let's have a little look at the salesman order. The salesman reckons about half. Well, let's have a look at the actual numbers involved. There were 60 people altogether, and 32 of them are size 2. So the salesman is right. Okay. Okay. So because you've got 32 people who have a hat size of 2, and you've got 60 people altogether, that's about half, isn't it? So you could guess then that, well, about half the people who come in are going to be getting this hat size. Same kind of thing with shoes. If you think about it, most people's shoes, when you get a little bit older, are about size 9 or size 10, size 11. You wouldn't order the same number of size 13 shoes as you would size 10 shoes, because the size 10 ones are more popular, basically. So that's what that question's looking for there. It's tricky to spot, but then once you spot what to do about linking these 2 tables together, it's an easy piece of sort of maths to decide who's right.